Welcome back to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to advice from CNBC's Make It YouTube channel, and we're going to look for videos that give advice on money, and we'll be critiquing those. So we're going to skip people's budgets, and instead we're going to go right for the throat of any video that looks like it's going to try to give us money advice. We'll tear it apart. All right, first one here that seems to be interesting, that has a 70% like ratio. Kevin O'Leary, don't ever buy a car. All right, let's hear it.
You're thinking about buying a car. Let me give you a new idea. Don't.
Where is this going?
There's so many shared ride services today, even when you have to leave the city. You can rent one. Cars.
Are we seriously about to go down the rabbit hole of you shouldn't own a car because you should use rideshare services? Most people have to commute and get to work every single day, and they got to get to grocery stores, whatever. You think they want to be in the back of an Uber doing chit chat every single day? Ugh. No, I mean, Uber's great and Lyft's great for certain purposes, but not every freaking day, and that gets expensive too. I mean, maybe at that point you get the Uber 5% off card, but even then, it still gets expensive.
Cars cost a fortune in maintenance and insurance and just the amortization, which means as they go down in value, you're losing money. Let's say.
Is he seriously talking to like a 5-year-old here? Really? Cars cost money? Cars have to have insurance and they go down in value and they have maintenance? What? It's this kind of hyperbole where they're just making these like blatant, statements that are so obvious, these like truisms, and then they kind of exaggerate the impact of them. That frustrates me because it's like, I get it. You want us to use rideshare services, but don't tell me you want us to use rideshare services because cars have maintenance and they depreciate over time. Like, this is where I like just getting a really high quality Toyota or something that is very, very reliable that you could keep for 7 or 8 years. I did that with my Toyota Prius. And look, the Prius was popular in California. If I was living in Florida, I would have gotten like a Toyota Tundra or something like that because that's what's normal in the area there. But I'd get something that was either new and then keep it forever, or used, a couple of years used, and then milk that forever. There's got to be more to this argument.
I use my phone to call Uber or Lyft, and they take me around the city. I save a fortune. I feel good about it. I hate cars. Even if you use a car every day to get to work, it's still cheaper to use a shared ride service because you can choose.
Are you kidding me? Let's do some really quick math here. Okay, so I just pulled up a car loan calculator. If you bought a car and you got it financed, let's say you financed the whole thing for 25 grand at 4% interest for 60 months. That means you're paying $460 in principal and interest every single month. So $460 plus insurance of, let's say, $70 plus registration of, say, $30 puts you at $560 per month, or $18.67 per day. So you're telling me commuting to work every single day, and going to the gym, and going to the bank, and going to groceries, and dropping the kids off at preschool, and picking up the kids from preschool, all of this is somehow going to be cheaper than $18 per day? Even if I threw in another $100 a month for gas and maintenance, it's gonna change my cost of ownership like $3 a day. It's like, bro, what are you smoking, Kevin? No.
Of luxury you want. You can share the ride with somebody else. I know people that
I don't want to share it with anybody else. And when I'm in the car, sometimes I just want to be alone. Like, I just want to think to myself, like, the last thing I want to do is sit there and have chit chat. That's seriously the last thing I want. I'm the kind of person that sees the little Uber thing say, your driver is known for great conversation. And I'm like, can I cancel the ride? Okay, like, sometimes I just want to be in my own box.
You're working in a city where you can either take the subway or basically use a shared service. Try both.
This is a little unreasonable. I mean, obviously, if you're in Manhattan, you use the subway and you walk, or you use an Uber to get around. But the median home price in Manhattan is $1 million. So I think most people aren't living in Manhattan, and most people would rather have a car that one day they will own free and clear, and then your payment is $0. All right, this one's not super hated, like the like to dislike ratio is pretty normal. Let's see what we can hear here.
You know, it's really tough to peg numbers and nail them to the cent. But here's one for you to think about. By the time you hit 33 years old, you should have $100,000 saved somewhere. Make that your goal.
I would honestly hope that your goal is much more than that. If your goal is $100,000 by 33, that ain't that great, because you could pretty easily get to $100,000 in net worth, no matter what your age is, by buying a really good deal in real estate. This is why we have a course on real estate investing. This is why most of the videos I make are about real estate investing and how you can buy below market deals and build a net worth fast. So to me, I mean, I get it. Maybe if you're not buying real estate, that should be your goal. But that by 33, I don't know. It just seems like a little bit of a small goal there. I'd want bigger goals.
You can do it. I'll tell you how. You save 20% of your paycheck, and you let the market grow at 5 to 7% a year. You can get to $100,000.
Okay, I mean, this is pretty basic financial advice. I don't know, I'm a little overwhelmed by just the amount of basic financial advice that's out there. But this is very, very basic, because what he's saying is right. Let's say right now I made this calculator. I call it the dream calculator. Let's say that you're currently 25 years old and your our age, which is supposed to be retirement age, is 33. And we want over 8 years to come up with $100,000, and right now we have zero. How can we get there? Well, if we invested, my guess, about $1,000 a month. Boom, okay, there. At 3% on our money, we'd be at $100,000. At a 7% return, we'd be at $123,000, 8%, $127,000, so on and so forth. But this is small potatoes to me. Like, I'd much rather find, a $50,000 wedge real estate deal every even, 3 years, and then invest additional money on top of that, to where now all of a sudden I'm investing something like $30,000 per year, and I'm getting higher rates of return with leveraged appreciation. That starts looking a lot more juicy. Now all of a sudden we're going from 0 at 25 to $320,000, $350,000 by the time we're 33. That is a better goal, IMO, and one that is very, very realistic. All right, this one's a little bit more hated. Let's see why this one's so hated. Let's go ahead and watch it and find out.
My best advice for building wealth quickly is to first start with your full-time job. You want to be making as much money as possible, and in reality, most people are actually leaving a lot of money on the table. A vast majority of Americans believe they deserve a raise, but then they don't go and ask for one. They're too afraid that if they ask, they're going to get fired, or they have some fear of authority, and so they...
Okay. I mean, if this is what he's saying for how to build wealth fast, I could see why this is hated. I mean, what he's saying is right. It's a good idea to go to your boss and ask, hey, what could I do differently so that I could best set myself up for a promotion or a raise? I like that idea. But if that's his argument for how to build wealth fast, that's not gonna build wealth fast. You can make an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year, but if you're not putting it into places that are going to give you decent returns, I mean, I personally, look, index funds, great idea. I think we all know below market real estate is where you're gonna make the big wealth, but if you're not into that, go ahead and open up like a Fidelity zero-fee index fund investing account where you can invest in like a total stock market index fund and pay zero in fees. That's a good option too. Let's see if there's any other content in this.
They just keep working and they don't make as much money as possible. It costs the average company about 40 to 60% of your salary to replace you. Most employees have a lot more leverage to negotiate a raise than they think they do. Here are my top tips to ask for a raise. Do the research on what you should be getting.
I mean, that's some pretty decent advice. It seems like that's what this whole video is going to be dedicated towards. I think people think they just got clickbaited on this one. So it's decent advice. I recommend it, but I think people are looking for how to invest. Let's move on. How to retire in 10 years on a $70,000 salary. By the way, if you ever have anything you want me to react to, make sure you send me a message on Instagram at @MeKevin.
I think a vast majority of Americans can retire in 10 years or less if they're making at least $70,000 per year.
This sounds bogus.
If you want to retire in 10 years or less, the number one thing that you need to do is just get creative with your money. And so the important thing here is to realize that saving is not a sacrifice, it's an opportunity. And so you're gonna...
Wait. Is this guy seriously going to say that to retire in 10 years on $70,000 a year, you have to A, get creative, and then the first example he gives right after that is saving is not a sacrifice, it's an opportunity? Dude, A, boring, B, unrealistic.
You're gonna have to live a little bit differently than most people in order to make this happen.
You know, that's the other thing that frustrates me so much is people are like, you're gonna have to cut your life down. You're gonna have to cut out the coffee. You're gonna have to cut out this. You're gonna have to cut out that. It's like, no. The wrong way to build wealth is to be miserable and have a bigger number in your bank account. That's a terrible way to build wealth.
Live in the least expensive apartment that you can. Get roommates, house hack. Buy a 2-bedroom apartment or 3-bedroom and rent out the other rooms to keep your housing expenses low as possible.
Okay, that to me, that's way better than like saving is a sacrifice. That's actually decent advice. I mean, I do like the advice to start by buying a 2 or 3 bedroom like condo or townhouse or something like that and then renting out the other rooms. That's pretty good advice. And honestly, for most younger people that don't have children, it's actually not a sacrifice. It beats being alone. You actually have like people that you can hang out with. I do like that.
The next thing is if you're making $70,000, the one thing that I recommend that you do is go out and just try to make a little extra money. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to go out and try to make an extra $10,000 or more per month. But every $1,000 that you make and invest instead, that's going to cut literally months off the time that it'll take you to retire.
I mean, honestly, this whole like have your main job and then like 3 or 4 extra side hustles, I'm not a big fan of. I'd rather figure out how can I make more at the job that I'm currently working in. If I'm not making the most that I could be making at my job, can I get more hours? If I can't get more hours, can I get a different job that's going to pay me for better results because I'm putting more time in? My favorite one of those, by the way, is sales. Think about it. If you were young and you wanted to make a living and then you just dove into car sales and you literally worked 14-hour days instead of everybody else punching in their 7.5-hour days, you'd make way more money, you'd get better at it, and it's much easier to make more money at your primary hustle than it is to start other businesses and other customer service businesses. Yeah, whatever.
And so if you're making $70,000, launch a couple side hustles, freelance on the weekends, and freelance to invest. So
No, freelance to invest, no. Because if you freelance to invest, then the first thing that happens is when you get overwhelmed and overworked, you stop freelancing and then you stop investing. So he's saying, save with your job, but then freelance to invest, have a couple side hustles. Oh yeah, like anybody can just pick up a camera and go be a professional photographer on the weekend. It doesn't work that way. This is why most side hustles fail and they end up costing people more money. It's just the stupid notion. It's fun for the first.
And then the final thing, just stick with it. That's the most important.
Dude, this guy is just setting you up for burnout. No. Oh, no. No wonder there's so many dislikes. Really? Like, save money, have a side hustle, and keep doing it. There you go, guys. Now you're gonna retire in 10 years on a $70,000 salary. I'm done with this video. Want to save money on San Francisco rent? Become an extreme commuter? Are you kidding me?
The amount of miles I travel going to and from work is around 140 miles. That's 72 miles each way.
That sounds miserable.
And it works much better for me because in the mornings I avoid quite a bit of traffic coming into work. Also, I make it home on time to also have a life outside of work.
Dude, you ain't not having a life outside of work if you're waking up at 4:30 in the morning. You are dead by the time you get back. Now, I guess in theory, you could sleep on the train, but statistically, as soon as your commute is longer than 30 minutes to get to work, your level of happiness rapidly declines very fast. And the last thing I think anybody should try to do to save a little bit of money and have like a bigger home to live in or whatever is commute 4 hours. That sounds bad. 4 hours a day out of your life on a train or in a car? No. Oh, here we go. This one's gonna trigger me. Buying a home is usually a terrible investment. Let's do it.
A lot of people will tell you that buying a home is a good investment, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Hold on a second. First of all, there is almost no wealth manager out there that's going to invest your money that's going to say, oh yeah, buying a house is a good idea. Why? Because they don't make any money by giving you that advice. Realtors do. And if you think I'm somehow jaded because I'm a real estate broker, don't think that way. The odds of me being able to represent you, wherever the heck it is you're watching this, are next to nothing. Whereas this guy could take investment funds from anybody around the world. Huge difference in jade level you should have there.
If you look at homes, most people say, hey, I bought a home 10 years ago, bought it for $200,000, I sold it for $300,000, what an amazing investment. But in reality, it's usually a terrible investment because you're paying to live in that home. You're paying property taxes, you're paying maintenance.
No. Let's just stop there for a second. Of course you're paying property taxes and you're paying maintenance, but you factor that in. If you could rent a place for $2,000 and you could buy a place where your total payment's like $1,800, then you have a cushion for those maintenance and the repairs that come up. And usually when people talk about their payment, they're talking principal, interest, taxes, and insurance anyway. Then he also goes on to say, oh, well, you sold it after 10 years. Well, what about the idea of renting it out and actually turning the property that you know very well, you know inside and out, you've lived there for 10 years, into a quality rental property? I guarantee you they're not gonna hit that.
You're paying maintenance, you're paying insurance, and there are all these other things that happen with your home that you've got to pay for. Once you add that to the cost that you've put in many cases, you're better off owning much less home or even renting and taking the money that you save, investing it in a diversified portfolio, and
look, this is conflating arguments here. He said you're better off owning much less home. Okay, then own less home. Like if you want to buy a smaller property, that's a great idea. That's actually a good point. But don't mix that into a home is a terrible investment. Yeah, if you get too large of a home, yeah, that's a terrible investment because then it turns into butter. You know, you're just trying to, ooh, I want a bigger house, I want to feel good. But if you own something smaller than or similar to what you were going to rent, and then you keep it as a rental property in the future, that is an excellent investment, especially if you can buy in with wedge deals. And that's, whatever. These people don't understand real estate.
if you bought, what would that cost? Would it cost $4,000 or $5,000 a month? What are all the other costs you're not?
Wait, whoa. Like, I think he's expecting people not to do the math. Really? Like something's gonna rent for $2,500 and your payment's gonna be $4,000 or $5,000? Maybe if you're putting zero money down, but come on. This is just the jaded comparison. This doesn't make sense. Real estate cash flows when you put at least 25% down. And if you could get a good deal on that and in the future turn it into a rental property, you've got yourself an incredible investment. When it comes time to retire, this property's paid off or you have multiple investments paid off, you're the one sitting pretty owning real estate. Just a note, real estate will also cash flow if you get a really good deal. So for example, if you put 5% down, but you get something 20% below market value, it's almost as if you put 25% down and you still get the cash flow with little money down.
Is it's forced savings. You've got to find the money every month to put into your home to pay that mortgage, so it forces you to build equity. But if you're disciplined, what you can do is you can take that difference, you can go open an account at a low-cost custodian and invest in a diversified portfolio. You could start with something like the S&P 500. And if you take that difference that you were going to pay towards the home and you save that every single month.
Okay, all right, I get it. So his whole argument premises around if you're spending more on a property, then you should rent and invest the difference. That's fine, I get that. My argument is you shouldn't spend more. You should spend the similar or less and own. Now get the best of both. All right, let's keep going here. What is this? Don't buy a house before you ask this question. What's that question? We're going down the rabbit hole.
What if you discovered that real estate isn't as good of an investment as everybody says? I know. Everybody's got a story about some aunt. She bought her house in 1970 for $100,000 and she sold it last year for $800,000. So what do? You think, oh, $700,000 profit. Rich! That's not quite how it works. When you factor in those numbers, most people never factor in all the phantom costs, including taxes.
This guy's the same as the other. Now taxes and maintenance and insurance, inflation? Oh my gosh. This guy's worse than the other guy. Inflation, when you own real estate, and you own a house that's, let's say, like this person said, $800,000, and you have a loan on it of, let's say, $600,000. When inflation happens, your debt becomes easier to pay off, because let's say your wages go from $100,000 to $105,000 to $110,000 as inflation happens. That debt stays at $600,000. That debt becomes less valuable. You pay it off easier. Inflation also pushes up appreciation on real estate, which gives you more value in the property. But this phantom cost, what duh? You factor that in when you buy the property. It's the same thing as like, are you gonna lease a car? Then basically the depreciation and the repairs are built into the cost of the lease. Or are you going to buy a car where now you have to factor in and break apart maintenance? Like if you do the math, I think these people are honestly expecting consumers not to do the math.
You know what else they don't think about? If they had taken that money and invested it somewhere else, odds are it actually would have turned into a lot more. In fact, data shows that the stock market typically trounces the performance of real estate as an investment.
No! I'm done with this guy. We got to get off the real estate topic because I'm getting too jaded. Stock returns do not trounce real estate returns when you factor in safe forms of real estate leverage. When you put 25% down on a property, or you put 5% down on the property, but you got a really good wedge deal, so where it's kind of like you put 20 or 25% down, generally, your returns on real estate will significantly outperform stocks, because while you might be making 8%, 9% on stocks, if you're lucky, if things continue with historical growth trends and you reinvest dividends, the odds are you could make more than that in real estate, not only making wedge deals, but now think about it this way. You put $20,000 into a deal that's worth $100,000, that property doubles in value over time. You just made $100,000, not by doubling your money, but you actually made $100,000 by doubling the value of the property, which is 5 times your original investment of $20,000. That's the leveraged appreciation, sort of a quick primer on that. Why millennials are broke. Let's hear it.
Politicians and billionaires who say things like millennials are spending their money on avocado toast and that's why they can't afford housing. That's not what's going on.
Okay.
So I feel like if my book Squeezed accomplishes anything, I want it for people to say, stop blaming yourself and start blaming the system, or start blaming the deeper causes of your economic fragility and instability. Let's look at wages.
Wait. Is she seriously saying millennials are broke because the system is rigged?
Let's look at wages not keeping up for many people. Let's look at prices soaring. So middle class life is now 30% more expensive than it was 20 years ago.
Really? The same system that lets you buy stocks from your phone, that lets you invest into index funds for free, that lets you earn 2.3% on your savings, that lets you pack your bags and move jobs anytime you want, that lets you start any kind of business you want. Really? The system's rigged that lets you buy under market value real estate? Really? No, lady. All right, here's another one. When to buy a house, Kevin O'Leary.
It seems that interest rates are never going to go up. And that's a good thing if you want to buy a home and go into debt. But ask yourself this question before you even consider this.
Yeah, I hate it when people say, oh, if you buy a house, you're gonna go into debt. I mean, really, you have to make that balance between owning versus renting and realizing the incredible benefits of owning real estate debt, like how that debt becomes less valuable over time, like we talked about with inflation, or how once you start developing that portfolio, you can start writing off interest on debt. You know, you have to start building that portfolio to really take full advantage of the tax benefits, but you gotta start somewhere. The sooner you start, the better.
Do I actually want to have a mortgage? Do I want to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars to somebody? Maybe I should just rent for a while, get a feel for the neighborhood I'm in, and make sure that my job that's providing the income to pay for my life and my mortgage is stable.
I mean, that's actually not bad advice. I do recommend that if you're just now moving into a new area, get to know the area first. Become an expert in the area and rent before you buy.
Once you're feeling very comfortable about that, and maybe you're thinking about getting hitched up and starting a family, then considering a mortgage might make sense.
No. I would not wait until like getting married or having a family to buy, because that ruins a lot of the great opportunity you have to buy a property, buy a studio or a 1-bedroom, then move and buy a 2-bedroom, then move and buy a 3-bedroom, then move and buy a 4-bedroom. Constantly, you could just put down, you could get good deals on these, put down 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%. But because you've gotten good deals, the mortgage insurance doesn't matter that much. You can get rid of it quickly because you've built equity immediately, because you bought below market value. Like buying a house, once you've started a family, almost kind of strands you into that house. And then you're kind of like, well, now I don't want to move. Now I have to come up with 25% down for a rental property. Dang, this sucks. I guess I'm not buying real estate anymore. You know, like it becomes a lot harder. The later you start in real estate, the harder it becomes.
What I hate about mortgages, they're very finite. You owe money, lots and lots and lots of money. And you know with certainty, regardless of what interest rates are, you're gonna pay interest.
Oh, you're gonna pay interest. Like, wait a minute. Like, to say, oh, you're gonna pay interest to the bank, oh my gosh. And you followed my rule of you buy something that's slightly cheaper or similar to what you're renting for, then saying, oh, you're paying interest over here is the same thing as like saying, oh, you're paying your landlord's interest. It's like, this is the same thing. This is not an argument. It's not an argument to say don't buy a house because, oh, you have to pay interest to a bank. You have to make that payment every month. Well, you know what else you get to do every single month when you have a mortgage? Every single month when you definitely make that payment, you pay off that loan every single month. When you decide to move and you rent out that property for more than what your payment is, guess what's happening now? Your tenant is paying off that debt for you every single month. So every single month, your net worth is going ding, 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 ding. And then after 30 or 15 years, it's paid off. To me, these short videos are just bad argumentation. They're like playing on fears. I don't like this.
You're gonna pay interest. That's what happens. Don't get lulled into an effect of, gee, the rates are low, that means I should go into debt. It doesn't matter what interest rates are. Debt is debt. And you
Is this seriously Kevin O'Leary not differentiating good debt and bad debt? This is shocking.
have to pay it back. What could happen, which would be horrendous, if you go into a floating rate mortgage and all of a sudden for some reasons rates do go up, you're screwed.
Dude, this is like literally a slippery slope example. You don't want to have to pay interest because you definitely have to pay that interest. And golly, if you go into debt, you have to pay that debt back. And oh my gosh. What if you got a variable rate loan instead of a fixed rate loan, which like 90% of people get the fixed rate loans? What if you're one of those few people that decides, I'm gonna get an adjustable rate mortgage? And then what if those rates skyrocket and you die? Dying is bad. Come on, Kevin O'Leary, I would expect better from a shark.
Because what you thought you were going to pay is going to be much more, and it's going to put the squeeze on you in ways you're not going to like. Try and avoid debt in the first place. Don't fall in love with being in debt through a mortgage. Fall in love with being debt-free. Feels way better.
I own millions of dollars of real estate, and I also have a debt on this real estate, and I feel great. For that reason, I'm out.